Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, morning. It looks like the chat has already started. So we have chat box over here. Of course, you can always text me to remind if you need to ask me questions. Before we get into monetary policy and the money market graph, I will be answering questions about the grading guidelines because grades start on Monday. So here is a little gist of the grading guidelines. Your classes should have 2 grades every week. So all of your classes, 2 grades each week. One of those grades is going to be a completion grade, while the other grade is going to be a competency grade. Like it's based on accuracy, right, wrong, things like that. So I will post all of this on Google Classroom. I'll type it all up so you can read it on your own time. But here's basically what it's going to say. It's going to say that from Monday through Thursday, our assignments will have little exit tickets. I'll probably do like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because then Thursday is going to be the big assignment. So Monday through Wednesday, we'll have exit tickets. You'll have to do all 3 of those for that completion grade. And then on Thursday, after the lesson on Thursday, there will be a Google form just like we did yesterday or last night or this morning or whenever you did it. That's, questions that covers like the whole week and the big concepts for that week. So as I'm talking about that, I said that Google form is going to be due at 10. It is now 10:02. So I'm going to quickly go to that Google form and I am going to shut it down to stop accepting responses because I am about to go over it. So I'm going to, where is it? I am no longer accepting responses. And that's just the way that it is. So that way I can go over it and it's not like benefiting other people while hurting others. So if you haven't done it by now, you won't be able to do it. So that's how it's going to be. There will not be any final exams for any of your classes. I don't know about DC classes. They might have final exams still, but if it's AP or on-level classes, there won't be any final exams. Talking about exams and AP exams, hold on, I want to get the picture that I am talking about. Okay, so how our AP exam will be, it will be 2 FRQs, and one will be 25 minutes and the other one will be 15 minutes. And how that works is the exams are going to be open note, open book, but it's going to be, it says students will need to time themselves. There is a timer, but if you submit after the time, nothing will be counted. And if there is signs of plagiarism or cheating, those will be reported to universities and colleges. So don't do that. There's other things on here, but it's more like we'll get there when we get there. Are there any questions right now about grading guidelines or about the AP exam? No. Whatever y'all are planning over here. No. Okay. So any questions? I see Jay did not have time to do it. Okay, well, Jay, you got the pass because today's one wasn't a grade. But starting next week, you need to make sure that you're doing it on time because I'll have until office hours. So I'll post it Thursday sometime, and then you'll have office hours on Friday to do it. Okay. I see what's happening in the background, and I'm already annoyed by it. Okay, so any questions about grading guidelines or about AP tests? Yes, Matthew was wearing a Wookiee mask in the background. Go ahead, Matthew, you can put it on. I do not want it on myself. No, Matthew. Okay. Okay, questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, or concerns? Are we doing any major grades? Okay, so all grades are going to be equal. I should have said that earlier. Sorry, Andrea, I didn't say that. All grades are going to be of equal weight. So basically think of it as like there's no more grades more important than the other. The completion grade is worth just as much, I guess, as the other grade. What's it called? Randall's saying, please don't put yesterday's exit ticket in the grade book. I am not. The grades don't start till Monday, so I can't take any past stuff for grades of remote learning. That midterm that you guys did before break, that midterm is going to be in there, but like we've been told, everything's of equal weight. So that midterm is going to be a daily grade. So there's that. So our tests, a completion grade tests, there's no such thing as a test. It's going to be those, like basically the Google form that you had yesterday with like, I think it was 8, 9, 10 questions. Matthew, go away. 10 questions. That's going to be your accuracy grade. So if you get like an 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 or whatever, that's going to go in the grade book. But that will be just as worth. It'll be worth just as much as the previous exit tickets of completion, if that makes any sense. Still no word on students with 504s of like what, Kaylee, are you saying like extra time? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Extra time for students with extra time? If that's the case, just message me through Remind, like, hey, I still need a couple more. I just need a few more hours, or I need an extra day on this, and you're gonna get it. For the 504 students or students that need extra time, just keep me in the know, because I'm going to forget. I'm human. I'm going to forget. But if you be like, if you turn things in time, no big deal. But if you're like, hey, I haven't finished this, I can reopen things or keep things open for certain students. Just give me the heads up and tell me. Okay. Any other questions about grading guidelines or about AP exams or anything like that before we move on? Okay, so if you think of any, just type them in the box, and let's just dive in. Okay, let's talk about the assignment from yesterday. Okay, there's like chaos, I feel like, all around me, but okay. Let's talk about the Google form from yesterday. So the first question, it had an aggregate supply and demand graph with a recessionary gap. And then it talked about, like, should the Federal Reserve buy or sell bonds? Should they, what happens to interest rates? And I think at the very end of the exit ticket, it asked, like, were there any things that you want to talk about? And it seems like, can I go over the Laffer curve? Okay, that's a throwback.
Darth Vader and son.
Matthew, I'm trying to do some work. Okay. Okay. Andrea, I will probably go over the Laffer curve towards the end, because that has to do with fiscal policy. We've already kind of moved on from monetary policy. There was an office hour where we already talked about the Laffer curve. So if you'd like to go onto my YouTube account, you can see previous office hours. So go back to the assignment that talked about Laffer curve to see the date, and then just go for, like, look for the office hours that correspond to that. So now let's talk about monetary policy now, because a lot of you guys asked, like, I don't get the connection with bonds and interest rates, and how do I know what happens to interest rates, and how is that connecting to aggregate supply and demand? Those are the main questions. So let me show you a money market graph. Remember, money demand is downward sloping, money supply is completely vertical, and where they intersect is equilibrium. Quick question though, and I want you guys to type your answers in the chat box. What is this interest rate called? What is this interest rate? This particular one, what is it called? Type it, type. What is it called? What is that interest rate called? Yes, Kylie, I can't read. God, I'm so stupid. Kylie, yes, federal funds interest rate. Sticker for you. This right here, this federal funds interest rate is the interest rate that banks charge each other. That's the interest rate that's really going to affect every other interest because credit card interest rates, school loan interest rates, all of it's kind of based off of this one. So if this one were to go up, all those other interest rates go up. If this one was to fall, all of the other ones fall. So how are bonds connected to interest rates, and how are interest rates connected to aggregate supply and demand? So the Federal Reserve controls this curve. The Federal Reserve controls the money supply. That's their main job. They can increase or decrease the money supply, and they can do that by buying and selling bonds. So let's say the Federal Reserve buys bonds. That changes money supply because the interest, so think of you guys out there as the public, as people with whatever money and buying and all over the market, and I'm the Federal Reserve, and I'm going to buy a whole bunch of bonds from you, and I'm going to give you money, and now you guys can go on and spend them. But when I give you guys money, that puts more money in circulation because you guys had bonds, but now I bought them from you, so you guys now have money instead. And so buying bonds increases money supply, and it's just money supply to the right. So this is buying bonds. When the Fed buys bonds, not when you guys buy bonds, when the Fed buys bonds, then it increases money supply. And look, what happened to the interest rate? It fell. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, you remember our aggregate demand shifters? Changes in consumption, changes in investment spending, government spending, and net exports, right? Well, two of these guys, us, and businesses' investment spending, they take out loans all the time, and they take out loans depending on sometimes what the interest rate is. And if interest rates have fallen like they do when the Federal Reserve buys bonds, then it's cheaper to take out a loan. So investment spending is going to go up because they can take out more loans for cheaper. And probably you guys can now afford to buy a car or buy a bigger house or something because if interest rates are so low. And that's going to shift aggregate demand to the right. So we would do this when we want to shift aggregate demand to the right. So we must be in a recession if we want to shift aggregate demand to the right. So buying bonds expands the economy and shifts aggregate demand to the right because it increases money supply, which lowers the interest rates. And yes, Jacob, businesses can take out a loan to buy pizza ovens, shifting aggregate demand to the right, closing that recessionary gap. Okay. Let's do the opposite now. You probably could figure it out because it's literally the opposite. But, okay. Now let's do, and by the way, there's no way to start off on the money market graph with recession or with inflation. It's just you start off in equal. There's no long run or short run. So there's no gaps on this money market graph. Quantity of money. Okay. So here's money supply, money demand. I want you to write in the chat box what the Fed sells bonds, how would that affect money supply? If the Federal Reserve decides to sell bonds on the open market, how would that affect this curve, money supply? Write it in the chat box. Selling bonds. It shifts left. How else could you describe it? Money supply shifts less, money supply shifts less, money supply, yes. Money supply decreases, it lowers money supply. All of those are accurate. So money supply goes to the left. All right. Interest rates go up. Someone says less money demand. We are not shifting money demand right now. Buying and selling bonds only shifts money supply right and left. But we are not going to shift money. It does shift. It does. We are not going to shift it for a couple weeks or a week and a half, depending on how long it gets us to do other things. Just because right now with monetary policy, I just want you to focus on this one line. What's the difference between money supply and quantity of M? There is no difference. See how it's completely vertical? That is the quantity. If there's more money supply, then there's more quantity of money. There's less money supply, then there's less quantity of money. There is no difference. It's just usually we put Q on the x-axis. But good job. Good question, Kylie. Okay. So money supply shifts to the left like it did. Interest rates goes up. And I want you to write on in your yes, less money in circulation. Good job, Andrea. I want you to write in the chat box what happens to aggregate demand if interest rates increase like they just did. What happens to aggregate demand if interest rates go up? Yes, it's just to the left. And the reason we would do that is because if we are in, boop, 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 boop. If we are in an inflationary gap like this, we want aggregate demand to shift to the left. We want to close that inflationary gap. We want less spending. And here's what gets me, for the last couple of years, we've been like this. We have been like this. This is us in the last couple of years. We've had like really low unemployment, like lower than full employment. We have had prices steadily rising. What did the Federal Reserve do though? They lowered interest rates. They didn't raise them like they should have. They lowered them. Now, when we're really in trouble, we've lowered them already as far as they can go. And now when we're really in trouble, we have no more bullets left to shoot. Our bullets are low interest rates. That's how we fight a recession. And when we're looking at possibly 10% unemployment, 15% unemployment, and our interest rates are already at zero, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I have no idea. No clue. Zach is saying, in yesterday's video, you mentioned the Federal Reserve bought a lot of bonds, putting the interest rate at zero. Will they have to use the other two tools, and how will that work? Well, the other two tools are already really okay. So the other two tools is the discount rate, which is the interest rate that the Federal Reserve charges for loans. So if you want to borrow money from another bank, if you are a bank and you want to borrow from another bank, you're going to pay the federal funds interest rate. But if you want to borrow from the Federal Reserve, you have to pay the discount rate. Okay, so this is how I remember it. I know. Why would you call the one that's not the Fed the federal funds rate? And then when you borrow from actually the Fed, it doesn't have the word federal in it. I don't know. So here's how I remember. Daddy discount, because the Federal Reserve is kind of like the daddy bank. So a daddy discount versus our federal friends. So if you're another bank and you borrow from another bank, you're going to pay your friend's rate, your federal friend's rate. But if you borrow from daddy bank, then you pay the daddy discount. So that's how I remember the difference. And sometimes it helps. But here's the thing. The discount rate is already at an all-time low. And the other monetary policy tool is the required reserve ratio, which is a fraction of deposits that must be kept in reserves. And honestly, okay, I'm going to look that up. I don't even know what the required reserve ratio currently is, what percentage it is. Current required, oh my gosh, I can't spell. Required reserve ratio is at 10%. Okay, I guess you could lower that. But here's the thing. Lowering how much money is required to be kept in the vault just frees up more money that's available for loans. That doesn't necessarily mean people are going to go out and take out those loans. It means more is available. That's like putting Like, oh, I'm having like a bake sale, and I have all these vegan cookies, and I put all these vegan cookies like on the table. It's like, okay, more cookies are available, but that doesn't mean that people want them, number one. And number two, people typically take out a loan because they feel like there's confidence that they can pay it back later. Like, I'm going to have a job later. But if the economy is so bad, even if interest rates are low and there's more money available, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take out more loans, because I'm not about to go out and buy a house right now, because who knows if like they're not going to have layoffs next year in like education and things like that. So I'm not certain about the future at all. Why am I going to go out and make a big purchase when I'm not guaranteed to even have a job next year? So, yeah, like Jacob says, who needs retirement fund anyway? Apparently not anybody. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox. It gets me really angry when it's like, when I barely know economics. Like, I do not have a doctorate in economics. I am not knowledgeable of every single thing going on in the economy whatsoever. But when I'm like, hey, shouldn't they be raising, like just a few years ago, we're talking about like the unemployment's at an all-time low and the economy's doing really well. And I'm like, shouldn't that mean we should slow it down before it gets worse, like before it crashes? God, I hate being right all the time. So frustrating. Okay, so let's talk about bond prices and interest rates, which was a question on the second part of the Google form. It like took you to another page and a couple more questions. Okay, bond prices. I don't know if you actually added that to your notes from the Google form, like you saw it and you just answered the question, or bond prices and interest rates. Bond prices and interest rates are inversely related. Okay, it is not important for you to know why. Just know that they are inversely related. The reason that it's not important for you to know why is that economists are not quite 100% sure of why. It's not simple as like supply and demand. It's just like I tried to find an article that explained why they were inversely related, why they were negatively related, and the shortest article that I could find to explain it was like 25 pages long, and at the end it was like, and that's just our guess. I'm like, well, what? So you do not. In fact, there was an AP test question that there was an FRQ a few years ago, and it basically said interest rates go up. What happens to bond prices and why? Like, that was the question. And so you're supposed to say bond prices go down. And the reason behind it was because they're inversely related. Like, that was it. They didn't even want you to tell me why they were inversely related. It just said like the reason why is if one goes up, the other one goes down, because that's how it works. So there's that. So when the Federal Reserve, Summer, I see your question. Let me just quickly talk about bond prices really quick, and then I'll answer your question. So if the Federal Reserve buys bonds, remember what happens to money supply? Do you remember what happens to interest rates? So I want you to type in the box right now. And Summer, I'll scroll up to your answer and just your question in just a second. Tell me what happens to interest rates when the Federal Reserve buys bonds. Right, up, down, up or down. Pick one. If the Federal Reserve buys bonds, what happens to interest rates? Type. What happened? Think about what happened in money supply. Did money supply go to the right, to the left? Where'd it go? Okay, most people are saying down. That is correct. If the Federal Reserve buys bonds, it increases money supply and interest rates go down. It's expansionary. Like, buying bonds is expansionary policy, so that's going to lower interest rates. If you want to expand the economy, interest rates should be low. And so then bond prices go up. It's that simple. So if the Federal Reserve buys bonds, interest rates fall and bond prices go up. If the Federal Reserve sells bonds, it's the exact opposite. Interest rates go up because that's contractionary monetary policy, and bond prices fall. Okay. All right. So any questions about this before I go on to Summer's question? Any questions about bond prices and interest rates? Just think about buying and selling bonds changes money supply, which changes the interest rate, and then that'll change bond prices. Question? Do you need to log in? Are you doing your schoolwork for today? Yes, you need to be doing your schoolwork for today. You have to finish whatever Miss Sabota put on Google Classroom.
Okay.
Daddy can help you there. Tomball, schools.net, TISD. Okay, there you go. All right. So Summer's question is the RRR the reason why people have to keep a certain amount of money in their checking accounts each month? Otherwise, you get charged, or is that unrelated? Not all accounts have a minimum balance. So I would say if it's a way for the bank to make money. And it's just that's how they make money. They make money through fees. And so they will put certain accounts that will collect more fees. So no, I would say that they're probably not all that related, because not every account has a minimum balance. Like my account does not have a minimum balance. Could Matthew please say Avada Kedavra? Oh, is that Avada Kedavra or Avada Kedavra? Are you talking about the killing spell? Sweetie, that is an unforgivable curse, and we do not torture, force people to do things, or do we not kill in this household? Come on now. All right, so let's talk about we talked about insurance. I had a thought as we were talking. Okay, just quickly. Let's talk about expansionary versus contractionary monetary policy, and then talk about how this is different than fiscal policy, because there was a lot of questions on the Google form that was all like, I don't know the difference between fiscal and monetary policy. We can go over that. So remember, 3 tools of monetary policy are bonds, changing the discount rate, and changing the required reserve ratio. So expansionary monetary policy increases money supply and aggregate demand, while contractionary monetary policy decreases money supply and aggregate demand. So how do they do that? Well, remember, can you go over the multiple choice question from the PowerPoint? I think there were 4. Yes, Emma, I will totally do that. To expand the economy, the Federal Reserve should buy bonds from the public. Of course, to contract it, they should sell. What about the discount rate, which is the interest rate that the Federal Reserve charges? To expand the economy, we should make it cheaper to borrow money. If they want people to spend more money, it should be cheaper to borrow then. So let's lower the discount rate. Of course, if people are spending way too much money and there's inflation, then we should raise the discount rate. And the required reserve ratio is a percent of deposits that must be kept in the bank at all times. Right now, it's 10%. 10% of all, not all the money that a bank has, but all money of deposits into like checking accounts then has to be kept in the bank. So right now, 10%. So that means if you went into a bank and you deposited $100, they have to keep 10 of those dollars in the vault at all times. The other $90 that you deposited, they can loan out, or they can put into like the ATM to be just withdrawn. So the required reserve ratio is a fraction of that money. So if you want to free up more money and give more money to customers, keep less in the bank at all times. Of course, if there's too much spending going on, then I want more money in the bank and less in your hands, and I will raise the required reserve ratio to contract the economy, lower it to expand. Okay. before I talk about what Emma just said, the difference between fiscal and monetary policy. Fiscal policy is done by Congress. Monetary policy is done by the Federal Reserve. So it's two different kind of branches of government, even though the Federal Reserve technically is not a branch of government. Two branches of the government that basically can, like, part of their responsibilities has effects on the economy. So they can change what they do to affect the economy, like Congress. The government. Congress, they have the ability to change taxes and or government spending. So those are the two tools, like the two tools that they have. Either of those two tools change, that's supposed to be a delta, change aggregate demand. So Congress can regulate these things to change aggregate demand. The Federal Reserve, though, they don't control taxes and they don't control government spending, but they can change money supply. And they can do that by either like buying or selling bonds, changing the discount rate, or changing the required reserve ratio. Either way, that's going to change interest rates, which then changes aggregate demand. So both of these institutions can change aggregate supply and demand just by different ways. Congress, they're going to change taxes and government spending. Obviously, changing taxes affects like your paycheck, and so you can buy more or less. Government spending is a direct shifter of aggregate demand, and so that's how it's going to change. And the Federal Reserve changes money supply, which changes the interest rate, and interest rates change both consumption and investment spending, which are both shifters of aggregate demand. So they both shift aggregate demand just to different ways based on their responsibilities. The Federal Reserve is responsible for money supply, and Congress is responsible for government actions, their revenue, and how they spend it. Okay, so going to Emma, she had a question about, I showed in the video 4 multiple choice questions, and then I took pictures of those 4 multiple choice questions. Do we need to know if fiscal and monetary policy is more effective? They are both equally effective and not effective at the same time, but know that monetary policy is less political than fiscal. So fiscal policy and monetary policy both take a lot of time to kick in, and they both have flaws. But monetary policy is less political and typically works better because it's less political. It's like no one's fighting to counteract the previous, head of the Fed, like Congress constantly trying to undo what their predecessors did. And so it's like we never get to really see the full effects of things because it's like they're upset and whatever. They're always trying to, well, if my person said this last year, I'm going to say the opposite. And so monetary policy typically works better. But main part of the AP test, it's less political. That's what they're going to say. They're not going to say which one works better because they're not trying to make a stand. But historically, monetary policy does work better. But it is less political. Probably why it works better. Okay, so here are some questions. So I can't show them to you. I mean, it's hard. Okay, I'll read them to you. So one of the questions says, all the following are ways that the Federal Reserve can change money supply except, meaning like all of these are tools except for one. So you try to figure out, is it A, buying government securities, B, selling government securities, C, changing the current tax rate, D, changing the required reserve ratio, or E, changing the discount rate. So all those were tools except for one. Did you catch the one that wasn't a tool of monetary policy because it's a tool of fiscal policy? Do you remember which one I said? You can type it in if you'd like. If you remember. Yeah, it was the tax rate one. It was C because that's a fiscal policy tool. So you need to know the difference between fiscal and monetary policy tools and who is doing what. Okay, the next question says, This one's wordy. This one's gonna be hard to like follow along by listening to me. It says, what is a benefit of expansionary monetary policy? So what's a benefit of expansionary monetary policy? Is it A, aggregate demand will increase, but employment will decrease? B, AD will decrease, but employment will increase? We're looking for benefits. We're looking for two good things, I'm assuming. C, AD will increase and employment will also increase. D, AS will increase. It's not D. Aggregate supply is not shifted by policy. Or E, none of the above. So aggregate demand increases and employment will also increase. B, do you remember the Phillips curve? Do you remember the Phillips curve? So inflation. Ooh, do I remember the Phillips curve? Short run Phillips curve, long run Phillips curve. So let's say we're in a recession. Bam, recession. And the Federal Reserve decides to buy bonds, which they should do in a recession. They decide to buy bonds, which increases money supply, lowers the interest rate, makes loans cheaper. Businesses take out more loans. Aggregate demand shifts to the right. Do you remember what that does to our Phillips curve graph, though? If there's a rightward shift of aggregate demand, what that does to our Phillips curve? Is it a shift? Is it movement? Up, down, left, right? The point moves up. It does. It does. And look, there's less unemployment, which means there's more employment. And so, yes, it's a point that moves up because it is a rightward shift of aggregate demand, which causes the movement up on the Phillips curve. And so there's more aggregate demand and less unemployment and more employment. Make sure that you guys, when you read employment, you don't read it as unemployment and vice versa. That's happened many, many times. Okay. Okay, that was one of the questions. Let's move on to another question. Oh, okay. This was a math question. It says, and I'm going to leave this open-ended, so I'm not going to even give you the answer choices, because with math questions, it's probably best if you don't look at the answer choices, you just do the math and then you see what works. It says, suppose the Federal Reserve increases money supply and investment spending increases by $10 billion. So investment spending goes up by $10 billion. What happens to aggregate demand if the MPC is 0.7? Okay, so MPC is 0.7 and investment spending went up by $10 billion. And I'm asking what happens to aggregate demand. I could have also asked what happens to GDP. It's going to be the same answer. Whatever happens to GDP is what's happening to aggregate demand. So do you remember, this is MPC. Do you remember this is spending, change of spending. Some sort of change in spending times the spending multiplier, KS, gives us some sort of change in real GDP. Remember the KS formula? KS is 1 over, there's a bug, MPS. MPC is 0.7. MPS is going to be 0.3. 1 over 0.3? Do you know how to figure that out? Yay! You guys did it. Is it increasing or decreasing? Up or down by 33 billion? Yes, it's increasing because investment spending went up by 10. So change the spending by positive 10 times the spending multiplier, which is 1 over 0.3, which is how many thirds are in a 1? 3 thirds are in a 1. So it should be like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, like 3, 3, 3. repeating, and that's going to be 10 times 3.333333, which is 33 billion, increasing. So GDP is going to go up by that much. Increasing like my problems are in life. Jacob, life is not that bad right now. It could be worse. It could be worse. I can't think of how it could be worse, but I'm sure it's worse at other places. Okay. And our last multiple choice question that I had was, this one is actually, I'm glad that we're looking at this. It says, if the Federal Reserve decided to increase the discount rate, then it would be, yay, Zach, you quoted me, but did you know that I was quoting somebody? Like I said, it could be worse. It could be raining. But that's actually from a movie. Imaginary sticker, if anyone can tell me what movie that is. Could be worse. It could be raining. And then it starts to immediately rain. There's no way you guys are going to get this because y'all are way too young. But this question right here. It says the Federal Reserve decided to increase the discount rate. What are they trying to do? This question we would have done in class. The majority of you would have gotten it wrong because I was going to take this question and use it as a teaching moment because there are a couple words in this question or a couple words in the answer choice that you don't know. So here is me. It's not the notebook. No. So here's the question. Or here is the answer. Expansionary policy has a synonym. Expansionary monetary policy and contractionary monetary policy has a synonym. So expansionary monetary policy is also called easy money policy. Easy money. It's not planes, trains, and automobiles. Easy money because money is flowing because there's lots of money around and like lots of money supply. So easy to get money is expansionary monetary policy. Contractionary monetary policy, the synonyms is tight money. Because you can say like, oh, you don't have any money right now. Money's really tight. Abby Baldwin and our dog Lacey says hi. Hello, dog and Abby. So the question was like, if they are going to, it is Young Frankenstein, Emma Vest. Good job. I am proud of you. The question says they're increasing the discount rate. Increasing the discount rate is contractionary monetary policy because they're trying to make it more expensive to borrow. And so the answer that would have been right is they're trying to achieve tight money policy. So, so there you go. Okay. Okay. I feel like we're in a good spot. Does anyone have anything that you want me to cover from here? I'll give you some topics. Tools of the Federal Reserve. What answer choice was A? Was it A? It was A. I think it was. Following a tight money policy. Yes, it was A. Tools of monetary policy. Money market graph. Monetary versus fiscal. M's. Functions of money. Just the FOMC setup in general. And like the Federal Reserve, like what their job is. Required reserve ratio, discount rate, what bonds are. Any of those questions? Any questions at all? Nope. Could I go over why money supply is downward sloping again? Yes, I can. Because that is a question that people get it wrong a lot. I just hate going over it. Okay, it's fine. I'll do it. I even read it as money demand. Emma, like you wrote money supply the first time, but I read it as money demand. How is my week? My week is going fine. Days are going by faster than I was hoping that they would be. I don't know. I started a new puzzle. I finished my first Harry Potter puzzle. I'm now on to my second Harry Potter puzzle. Okay, let me put some different colors on here. Do I have another marker? I do. How are y'all doing? How are you guys? I've had moments where I feel like my sanity is slipping. But other than that, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. All right. Here we go. Let's say that interest rates go from 1 to 2. Tired, stressed, blessed. Oh, that's very nice. And it rhymed. That seems like something that like tired, stressed, blessed seems like something that like a stay-at-home mom that like plays tennis or something that she would have on her towels in her guest bedroom or bathroom. You know what I mean? Like she would have like it would be all swirly on the wall where it's like tired, stressed, blessed. And then there'd be some sort of like bedazzling maybe. Anyway, so Emma, see, I told you. Yes, like live, laugh, love. Okay, we survived 3 decades too. Yeah, where it's all like April, May, and November all have whatever days, but March has like 8,000 days or something. Okay. I wonder how graduation's gonna go. I found a really cute GIF that was like an emoji walking across like a Word document, and then like, yeah, I miss school too. But I really am enjoying sleeping in. I'm telling you. Okay, so let's talk about money demand, downward sloping, and then let's be done for the day because I think that we are all just getting a little bit. Okay, so if interest rates go up from 1 to 2, there is going to be less money in circulation. Why? Because people are now going to be looking at money as differently. Sometimes people look at money of like how I can spend, like, ooh, I look at this as I can use this to spend. Some people look at it as I can use this to make me money. Well, it depends on interest rates. If interest rates are going up, you require less money for transactions and you want more money as an asset to earn interest. Of course, that means you're going to have to put it in a bank, like a savings account, to earn interest, which means there's less money in circulation because it's not in circulation anymore. It's in a bank. It's in a savings account. It's not an M1, it's an M2, which is savings accounts. And so there's less money in circulation because there's more demand for money to be used as an asset. Because there's interest to be earned because interest rates are up. But if interest rates fall, I don't see my money as a way to make money anymore. I see it as a way to buy things. And so I'm going to take it out of savings accounts. I'm going to put it in my wallet because it's not earning interest anyway. So I might as well have more money in circulation to buy things with. And so it's just like it's like, where do I want my money? I want it in the bank if there's high interest rates, which means there's less in circulation. And I want it in my wallet because why put it in a bank? There's no interest to be made, and there's more money now in circulation. So it's either, do I want my money as an asset with high interest rates? I do. Or do I want my money as a way for transactions to be made with lower interest rates? I do. Okay. Does that answer your question, Emma? Does that help? And yes, like learning is totally a social thing. I look forward to office hours just so I can like talk to people and have some sort of feedback. It's really hard to like teach to a screen, to like a camera, when I'm like, you guys get it? All right, I'm moving on anyways. And not like I can't read your faces. I can't see like a moment. I can't tell if you are totally past what I'm saying, like, okay, yeah, move on, let's go. Or if it's more like what I understand. So hopefully these office hours help with that a little bit. But so next week, just keep in mind on those due dates, make sure that you guys are turning things in on time. Get those, what's it called? Help. I guess I could say this next week. But next Friday, a week from today, is a holiday. It's a day off of school because it's Good Friday. So we will not have office hours next Friday. We will have them on Wednesday still. But that means I can't have like your big Google form assignment due on that Friday since it's no school. So it would be like our first assignment that's like for accuracy is going to be due that Thursday night. So because Friday's no school, and we've been told, like, make sure you take the day off. It's like, I'm in pajama pants. I don't have shoes on. Is this a day on? Because I'd hate to see a day off. So there's that. Make sure you guys are turning things in on time. Make sure you guys are marking things as done. Questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, or concerns before I let you guys go and I do some laundry? Questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, or concerns? There, sticker. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're done then. Have a great rest of your Friday. No lecture today. No lectures on Fridays. And I will see you guys later. Matthew, say goodbye. Say have a good weekend.
Bye.
Oh God, you're so weird. Oh yes. And as always, it's a great day. Wait, what is it? Have a great day. And as always, go Cougs.